In 1901, divers pulled a lump of corroded bronze out of a Roman shipwreck. Inside it, gears. Dozens of them, cut with a precision nobody thought existed for another 1400 years. That's not the strangest part. The strangest part is that in 2025, over a century after it was found, and after decades of modern analysis, researchers are still publishing papers arguing about whether the thing even worked. That's just one of 10. Every item on this list is real, it's sourced, and it's still genuinely unresolved. Not manufactured mystery, not ancient aliens. Actual open questions professional archaeologists are still working on. Counting down to the one nobody's fully cracked. Start with the one where the mystery might not even be a mystery, which is exactly why it belongs on this list. In 1936, workers excavating near Baghdad found a clay jar containing a copper cylinder wrapped around an iron rod, dated to somewhere between the 1st and 3rd centuries. The man who found it, Wilhelm Koenig, proposed something wild. Fill the jar with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, and the copper-iron reaction would generate a small electrical charge, maybe half a volt to a full volt, a 2,000-year-old battery. Here's the honest version almost nobody gives you. The battery theory is almost universally rejected by professional archaeologists today. There's no electroplated object from this period anywhere in the archaeological record that this device could have powered. The leading alternative theory is far less exciting. The jars may have simply stored sacred scrolls, sealed with bitumen for preservation. So why does it stay on lists like this one? Because nobody has definitively proven what these jars actually were for. The battery theory is almost certainly wrong. But almost certainly wrong isn't the same as solved. And that gap is exactly where this entire list lives. Near Lake Titicaca in Bolivia sits a site built by the Tiwanaku civilization around 536 AD, where massive stone blocks are cut with such precision they interlock without mortar. Corners, grooves, and drill holes so exact that photos of them circulate online captioned, "No way this is ancient." For decades, that precision fueled genuine speculation about lost technology. Here's what settled it. Researchers at UC Berkeley, led by Jean-Pierre Protzen and Stella Nair, actually replicated the technique, using nothing but the stone tools the Tiwanaku are known to have had: flint, quartzite, and obsidian. It worked. It's brutally labor-intensive and requires serious skill, but it doesn't require anything beyond what this civilization possessed. So the how is genuinely, experimentally solved. What isn't solved is the scale. Archaeologists estimate hundreds to thousands of workers, moving stones as heavy as 131 tons from a quarry 10 kilometers away, in rotating labor teams over multiple construction phases, for a site whose full purpose and social organization is still being pieced together. The stonework isn't the mystery anymore. The society that produced it still is. Carved into the Peruvian desert floor are hundreds of lines and geoglyphs, animals, geometric shapes, some stretching for miles, invisible from the ground and only fully legible from the air. They were made by removing dark surface stones to reveal lighter ground underneath, and they've survived largely undisturbed for over 1,000 years thanks to the region's near-total lack of rain and wind. The obvious question, why build something you can only see from above, with no aircraft, has never had a single accepted answer. Maria Reicher's astronomical calendar theory dominated for decades. The idea that the lines tracked solstices and celestial events for agricultural planning. More recent research complicates that. One line of study connects the geoglyphs to water and rainfall rituals, given how central water scarcity was to Nazca life. A separate 2020 survey from Yamagata University proposes something almost mundane by comparison, that many of the lines functioned as travel routes and communication pathways between settlements, with the animal figures marking waypoints along the paths. 3 serious, evidence-based theories. No consensus. The lines aren't a fringe mystery. They're a live, ongoing academic debate, decades after Reich first started measuring them by hand. In Lebanon, built into the foundation of a Roman temple complex, sit 3 limestone blocks so large the math barely makes sense. Each one weighs between 800 and 1,000 metric tons and measures roughly 19 meters long. They were quarried nearly a kilometer away, uphill from where they now sit. Modern engineers aren't stumped on whether it was possible. They're honestly divided on which specific method the Romans used to actually do it. The leading estimate is that moving a single stone required a coordinated force of 15,000 to 20,000 workers, using capstans and pulley systems over several months. A separate theory, based on the matching elevation between the quarry and the temple site, proposes the Romans may have used a canal system to partially float or slide the stones into place. Both explanations are grounded in real Roman engineering capability elsewhere in the empire. This isn't a "how is this humanly possible" mystery. It's a which of several plausible methods actually happened, and why did they stop before finishing mystery. A fourth, even larger stone, over 1,600 tons, still sits unfinished in the quarry today, abandoned mid-project for reasons nobody has recovered. Around 1200 BC, within roughly a single generation, nearly every major power in the eastern Mediterranean collapsed at once. The Hittite Empire, Mycenaean Greece, city after city across the Levant burned and abandoned. Egyptian temple inscriptions blame a coalition of raiders they called, collectively, the Sea Peoples. Here's the actual mystery. Nobody has ever definitively identified who they were. Egyptian records name several subgroups: the Peliset, the Shekelesh, the Denyen, the Sherdan. But none of these names cleanly map onto any known civilization with certainty. Archaeological clues point in real but scattered directions. Mycenaean-style pottery turning up in the Levant suggests displaced Aegean populations moving east as their own kingdoms fell apart. The scholarly understanding has genuinely shifted in the last couple of decades. The old story cast the Sea Peoples as the cause of the Bronze Age collapse. External invaders toppling stable empires. The current view treats them more as a symptom. Refugees and opportunists moving through a region already destabilized by drought, famine, and internal political failure. They may not have caused the collapse of the Bronze Age world. They may just be the clearest archaeological fingerprint left by people fleeing it. Either way, after more than a century of study, their actual identity is still an open case file. This one's barely 2 years old. For most of the 20th century, the assumption was that Stonehenge's central altar stone, like the site's other blue stones, came from Wales, roughly 200 kilometers away. Already an impressive Neolithic transport feat. In 2024, a research team analyzed the age and chemical signature of mineral grains in 2 altar stone fragments and got a result nobody expected. The stone's geological fingerprint matches a specific rock formation in northeast Scotland, the Orcadian Basin, over 750 kilometers from Stonehenge. Not Wales, Scotland. That single finding rewrites what we thought we understood about Neolithic Britain. It implies a level of long-distance transport, coordination, and possibly cross-regional political or ceremonial connection nobody had evidence for before. And the how is still unresolved. Researchers modeled whether Ice Age glaciers could have carried the stone partway naturally. The math doesn't really support it. The more likely explanation, published in the Journal of Quaternary Science, is that Neolithic communities hauled it deliberately, by land and water, across most of the length of Britain. Why they'd go to Scotland specifically for one stone when suitable rock existed far closer is the part nobody's explained yet. Discovered in caves near the Dead Sea, starting in 1947, this collection of roughly 900 ancient Jewish texts, including the oldest known copies of large portions of the Hebrew Bible, is one of the most significant archaeological finds of the 20th century, and who actually wrote them is still genuinely contested. The long-standing theory points to the Essenes, a Jewish sect believed to have lived at nearby Qumran. Textile analysis lends it some support. Nearly 200 fabric fragments found in the caves were undyed linen, plain and unbleached, in a way that fits ascetic religious practice, rather than the wool typical of the era. But that's not the whole picture. DNA analysis of the parchment itself found scrolls written on both cow and sheepskin, not just goat, as originally assumed, which points to more varied origins than a single isolated community. One archaeologist has argued the scrolls may instead have been brought to the caves for safekeeping by refugees fleeing Jerusalem's fall to Rome in 70 AD, meaning the caves were a hiding spot, not a scriptorium. Modern researchers are now using AI-driven handwriting analysis to try to determine how many individual scribes actually worked on the texts. The scrolls themselves aren't in doubt. Who held the pen and why still is. Named after the book dealer who acquired it in 1912, this roughly 240-page medieval manuscript is written in a script that matches no known language, alphabet, or cipher ever identified. Illustrated throughout with plants that don't correspond to any real species, alongside astronomical diagrams and what appear to be bathing figures in connected tubes. Radiocarbon dating places the vellum itself in the early 1400s, so this isn't a modern hoax on old paper. In 2024, researchers studying multispectral scans found something new. Faint, previously invisible columns of letters on the manuscript's first page, apparently added by an early owner attempting their own decryption centuries ago, meaning people have been trying and failing to crack this for far longer than modern cryptography has existed. Recent AI-based decoding claims have made headlines, including one analysis proposing the text follows a mathematical base 12 structure rather than natural language patterns. Linguists have pushed back hard. One researcher at UCL called these attempts pattern matching dressed up as decryption, pointing out that language models are extremely good at producing statistically plausible output that means nothing at all. Professional cryptologists, working with the same tools that cracked Enigma, still haven't broken it. Some now suspect it might be a constructed language rather than a cipher. Nobody knows for certain, which, after more than a century of dedicated attempts, is itself the finding. The Indus Valley civilization, flourishing across what's now Pakistan and northwest India roughly 4,500 years ago, was one of the largest urban civilizations of the ancient world, with sophisticated city planning and drainage systems rivaling anything else on Earth at the time. They also left behind thousands of short inscriptions, mostly on stone seals, in a script that remains completely undeciphered. The core problem isn't a lack of effort, it's a lack of raw material to work with. The average surviving inscription is only about 5 symbols long. There's no Rosetta Stone equivalent, no known bilingual text pairing the Indus script with a language we can already read. And unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or cuneiform, we don't even know for certain what language family it represents, which makes every proposed decipherment fundamentally unverifiable without new evidence. That hasn't stopped people from trying. In 2025, an Indian state government offered a $1 million prize to anyone who can definitively crack it. Current research increasingly leans on AI and machine learning, training neural networks to detect statistical patterns in symbol sequences that a human eye might miss. Several teams have claimed partial breakthroughs in recent years. None have produced a decipherment other specialists accept as proven. A civilization that built cities with covered sewers 4,500 years ago left us thousands of written records, and we genuinely cannot read a single one of them. Back to where this started. Pulled from a Roman-era shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901, this corroded lump of bronze turned out to contain a system of at least 30 precisely cut, interlocking gears. A level of mechanical engineering historians assumed didn't exist until medieval European clockwork, more than 1,000 years later. Decades of X-ray and CT analysis have shown what it did: model the movements of the sun, moon, and possibly the visible planets, predict eclipses, and track a 4-year athletic games cycle that included the Olympics. An analog astronomical computer built somewhere around the 2nd century BC. Here's why it's still unresolved even now. In 2024, University of Glasgow researchers used statistical techniques borrowed from gravitational wave physics to determine the mechanism's calendar ring almost certainly tracked 354 or 355 holes, matching a lunar calendar, not the Egyptian solar calendar many had assumed. Then, in 2025, a team of Argentinian researchers ran a full computer simulation incorporating the device's actual manufacturing imperfections and unusual triangular gear teeth, and found the mechanism likely jammed and slipped after only about 4 months of use, needing to be manually reset. Meanwhile, separate 2025 research pushed the other direction, confirming the mechanism achieved near-perfect precision in reconciling lunar and solar cycles. So take stock of where that leaves us. The most famous ancient device on Earth, recovered over a century ago and in a single recent year, credible peer-reviewed research couldn't even agree on whether it reliably worked. 9 other real mysteries on this list, and the oldest, most studied one, is still generating